I would like to thank you all for electing me the substantive president.
Things that are happening at the moment are not constitutional, and they must correct it. You must stand up with your that against to deal with issues, because the value system is what you must respect.
Welcome to the situation right now where we discuss the topical and hot socio-economic issues that are afflicting our country, where we endeavor to give you the answers to the questions that should matter to you. Now, this episode we joined in studio via Zoom by the former organizing secretary of the MDCT, Abednico Bhebhe. Abednico Bhebhe was expelled from the MDCT just as the party was going towards its extraordinary congress. He made an appeal with the High Court to ensure that the EOC was stopped so that he was able to have his matter concluded and therefore be brought back into the party so that he will be able also to run as a presidential candidate. That appeal failed. But over the past weekend, Abednico Bhebhe was allegedly readmitted to the MDCT. Now the man joins us in this episode so that we have that discussion to hear from him what actually is going on. Now welcome to the show, Chief, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Blessing. Thank you, listeners. How are you, everybody?
Yes. Now, let us just cut to the chase. You have expelled from the MDCT, but on 6 February, there's a statement that was released. And in this statement, Witness Dube, who's the Secretary for Information and Publicity, said that the National Council considered these issues, and among the issues of the consideration was that the National Council considered and resolved to readmit everyone who has expressed the desire to rejoin the party. Notably, former National Organizing Secretary Abednico Bhebhe and former Deputy Chairperson of Bulawayo Province, Dorcas Sibanda, were duly readmitted into the party as per their expression of interest. Now, can you clarify on this?
I think I will just summarize Blessing and say I have already put up a statement. Rather, let me say I actually wanted to receive something in writing from them after their National Council. But I waited for 3 days and there was nothing forthcoming. I then decided to reply in kind through the press as they had actually advised through the press. First and foremost, Blessing, is MDC is a party with a constitution. Because MDC is a party with a constitution, every decision that has to be done according to the dictates of the party constitution. If you look at how MDC operated soon after the death of Morgan Tsvangirai, there's always been disputes that were supposed or are supposed to be settled through the party's constitution dictates. That has since not happened. Yes, there are some that would claim that an extraordinary Congress took place on the 27th of December. As far as I am concerned, there are a lot of irregularities that we can mention that started even earlier than the first scheduled time of the extraordinary Congress. In particular, the extraordinary Congress was supposed to be sometime in May of 2020. But because there were so much irregularities and there were so many people that were not appraised and informed about the goings on in preparation of the extraordinary Congress, I, as the organizing secretary, I then decided, take the list of the 2014 Congress delegates, which list, has got over slightly over 4,000 names in that particular list. Let's assume maybe some had actually resigned and some had actually passed on. I don't think there were any people that could have been resigned or passed on, which could be reduced the figure of 4,000 to even less than 4,000. So that on its own tells you that there was, a lot of irregularities. People were being expelled left, right, and center. Some were being told verbally that they've been expelled. Some were recalled in Parliament, and some were written letters, as a firefighting measure to say you've been recalled. And some were actually told that those that actually belonged to the MDC alliance are not part or are not going to be part of the Congress. And personally, my fight or my misunderstanding with my colleagues was the fact that since the Supreme Court judgment declared that only 2014 Congress delegates are supposed to attend, those 2014 Congress delegates were actually spread across the two political factions. The political faction led by Thokozani Kube and the political faction led by Nelson Chamisa. So automatically it meant that those 2014 delegates should have come from the two formations. But to my surprise, my colleagues then turned around and say MDC Alliance was another political party. And my reading of the Supreme Court judgment does not say MDC Alliance was another political party, because it was enjoined on the Supreme Court judgment. Therefore, it was part of the Supreme Court judgment. And one of the reasons why these guys claim that they were firing me from the party, it is because I actually engaged, or I actually, mobilized members from both MDC Alliance and MDC-T, and they then turned around and say, I had joined another political party. So that's where the beginning of the crisis started. And because there was already a crisis, a lot of people then decided to sit back and not participate. And the biggest crisis then came on the issue of the voters' roll that was supposed to be used at Congress. And I can declare that the voters' roll that was used at Congress was a bogus voters' roll, a voters' roll that did not come from my office, because I was the custodian of the voters' roll of the 2014 Congress delegates.
Let us talk about the aspect of you being brought back to the party. Your statement says you are not aware of it, and you did not even express any interest of rejoining the party.
Actually, I think if you read my document, it spells it out clearly that the MDC constitution has got regulations on how a person can be readmitted to the party. And that regulation is in the constitution, and it clearly states that anyone who wants to rejoin the party after being expelled is supposed to appeal at Congress. In this case, I did not appeal at Congress. So therefore, my expression of interest should have been as a result of the resolutions that are coming from Congress. And remember that Congress, that so-called Congress in brackets, was screened live, and there was no discussions of any applications that came from any member. So therefore, whatever happened, it shows that the so-called MDC is a loose political party of people that have decided to come together and grab the political party that belongs to the movement as its formation in 2000 with the assistance of the government. and with the assistance of ZANU-PF. And that on its own, Zimbabweans will never and will never and will never forgive whoever thinks he is leading a political party called MDC, because MDC belongs to people.
Explain for me when you say that with the assistance of government and ZANU-PF.
First and foremost, when MDC was formed since 2000, we had differences many a times. And when we had those differences, there was no point where either the police nor the army came close to assisting the MDC. That's point number one. Point number two, ever since MDC was formed in 2000, there was no sympathy from any top ZANU-PF politician, namely people like Matema Danda, namely people like Jamwanda, who is, masquerading as a Jamwanda when he's actually known that is Mnangagwa spokesperson. Those are very clear testimonies that there is a hand of ZANU-PF. Thirdly, the ZANU-PF decided to assist MDC to violate the country's constitution by merely lying and saying to people that had joined other political parties and people were recalled in parliament, and ZANU-PF just implemented those calls flatly like that. And the fourth thing that I would want to mention, which is very fundamental, the so-called 27th December, extraordinary Congress, there were buses that were hired from ZUPCO. Ever since the formation of MDC, ZUPCO has always refused to take money or to be hired by MDC for MDC activities. There was, again, a very fundamental issue where the Sheraton, all of a sudden, it was so welcoming for the MDC to have its Congress at the National Conference Center. Those are clear testimony that ZANU-PF has gotten so close to the MDC, so much that those that claim that they are leading the MDC, they are actually being viewed by an ordinary person as proxies of ZANU-PF.
But when do you realize that ZANU-PF had a hand in the MDC? Is it when you were fired or before?
I actually realized it before, because this is why I'm mentioning events that were not, that happened before I was fired. And actually on those particular events, I raised an issue with my colleagues that, gentlemen, and I am on record and even on newspapers, particularly your newspaper staple, the Newsday. I said it very clearly that we are now dancing on the, ZANU-PF playground. We should desist because people are viewing us as a ZANU-PF project. And it is on record that even if my colleagues want to be honest, there should be a record, including the standing committee minutes, where I voiced my concern. And because I voiced my concern, I then became an enemy for voicing my concern. The second thing is, I actually voiced my concern and say, we need to unite for one common purpose, of which MDC was formed for. And that common purpose was for us to be an alternative to ZANU-PF, was for us to be a government in waiting, or was for us to be, replace ZANU-PF in government. So those were the reasons why, my colleagues decided to, turn against me, because I was very vocal. This thing started, and I said it very clearly. And if you still remember, we even went to the High Court in Harare, where I even spelled it clearly that there are things that are not being done properly in our political party. And those were some of the reasons why my colleagues decided to gang up against me and fire me from the party.
From where you are sitting, the Supreme Court issue was to bring constitutionalism into the MDC as a united front. Do you think that the MDC is led by constitutionalists or hungry power grabbers?
Look, I don't want people to believe that it is me who thinks that they are power grippers or they are people that are claiming to be constitutionalists. But there are fundamental things that will actually spell out. Because one thing that would actually come out clearly is when Thokozani Kupe decided to have his own outfit, that is the Congress in Bulawayo at Stanley Square, she was actually very loud and clear that they are constitutionalists. It was not me that was saying that. it was the head of that faction that had a Congress in Bulawayo that claimed that they were constitutionalists. And because they were constitutionalists, my biggest worry about people that were claiming to be constitutionalists is when I realized that they were now violating their own constitution. So the constitutionalism part of it actually fell off, and it was not something that they can talk about. It was just a window dressing. It was not something that they were practicing per se. It was something that they had actually been taken, strides to make sure that they then violate the constitution. And in the process, they were being protected by the courts of law. They were being protected by the sitting government.
When you say in Bulawayo, you mean that when the Congress in Bulawayo was happening, it was unconstitutional. Do I get you correctly?
No, it was. I don't want to be a judge here, whether it was constitutional or not constitutional. Because remember, let me qualify by saying there was a Congress that took place in Bulawayo in 2018. And there was a Congress that took place in Gweru in 2019. Those two congresses was as a result of the misunderstanding that took place on the death of Tsvangirai. I don't want to go back to that history. In summary, I am saying those that went to Bulawayo were claiming that they were constitutionalists, and they were claiming that those that went to Gweru were unconstitutional. So this is where the issue of constitutionalism comes in.
But you were also in Bulawayo, and you were part of the Congress that happened in Bulawayo. What was your standpoint at that particular time? Did you believe that you were doing the best at that time?
Exactly. I believed that I was doing the best at that time because there were fundamental issues that I believed that in my interpretation of the MDC constitution, they were not properly done. And because they were not properly done, and in my own judgment, I thought that the faction that was, closer to the constitution was the one that had the Congress in Bulawayo and Stanley Square.
You stood with Thokozani Kupe. You campaigned for her in 2018. How did it feel when she let you get fired by people who had ditched her and joined Nelson Chamisa at that particular time?
But let me call a spade. Whether Thokozani was assisted to get me fired or not is here nor there. But what is fundamental and true is the two letters that I hold, one for the suspension, two for the expulsion, they were both signed by Thokozani. So I don't want to place blame on any other person because the signatory of those two letters that I'm holding is none other than Thokozani. So therefore, common sense will tell you that she did let me down. She did let me down big time, and she did let the nation big time, and she did let the MDC family down big time.
Now that she's crying foul of being rigged on December 27, should people listen to her as she speaks about violation of the Constitution?
Actually, if you were to ask me as Bhebhe, I would not listen to her. Because those are the things that I personally told her one-on-one, personally told her in a meeting with other colleagues, and personally told her in a meeting of a standing committee. And she did not want to listen to me. Unfortunately, by her not listening to me, she's paying for those mistakes that she made.
Let's also look at the provincial congress that happened in Bulawayo, where you were alleged to have won, and then later on the results that came through alleged that you had not won. It has never really been explained. Can you explain that episode for us?
Those two results, obviously there was one that I believe I had won. Because those two results, as far as we are concerned, all the candidates that were there, we had agreed that those votes should not be counted. And already there was already problem simmering, because it was very clear that I was going for an outright win. And the only way to stop me was to hatch a plan to bring up a kangaroo national council meeting that purportedly fired me on that particular day sometime last year, so that they can pave way for themselves to go and grab the position that was left vacant by Morgan Tsvangirai. By the way, ask any MDC person who belongs to the MDC 2014 structure. They will all testify to the fact that had they all been allowed to go and vote, they were going to vote for nobody, none other than Abednico Bhebhe, who is myself. And definitely that, spells out that I was definitely going to win that Congress. And the only way to stop me was to stop the nominations. Because remember, the regulations of MDC is when you elect, a leader of a party, the first thing that you do, or the first process that you undertake, is the process of nomination. They had to suspend nominations because those nominations had exposed them that they were so weak, the people did not like them, they were not the favorite of the MDC delegates, and therefore they decided to get rid of a person who was the popular candidate.
Yeah. And they then went ahead and had an appointment of candidates instead of a nomination, we'd rather call it. Talk to us through that process. I mean, the results of the Congress Extraordinary Congress of December 27 actually shows that some people might not even have gotten nominations from provinces. Like, for instance, someone gets 10 votes, another one gets 9 votes.
Those are clear testimonies, because those people that got 10 votes and 9 votes, when we had our Congress in Bulawayo, I'm made to believe that they both got 0 votes. So that's a very clear testimony that there was a possibility that they were not going to get any nomination. By the way, if we had gone ahead with all the provincial nominations, I can bet you I was going to beat them 100%.
In your statement that you released yesterday, on item number 4, it says the party constitution was flagrantly violated and Douglas Monzora's leadership is disputed because of the serious irregularities that accompanied the shameful elections. Irregularities that could have been avoided, particularly by those misquandering as Democrats. Now, let's talk about that part, misquandering as Democrats. Is the MDC, as led by Douglas Monzora right now, a democratic party?
If you were to ask for my personal view, I'll openly say they are not a democratic lot. There are people that are masquerading as the leadership of a party. And my position and my advice to the colleagues, if they want to re-rail the MDC back to its rail and start moving as a united party, we need to stop, lying to, the generality of Zimbabweans that there was a Congress that took place in Harare. Firstly, because there was no authentic voters' roll. Secondly, there was no quorum, because our quorum, or our constitution states it very clearly that a quorum of a Congress should be 2/3 of members entitled or eligible to vote. And the fourth, there was a lot of irregularities. One, in terms of the chaos that took place there, in terms of the language that took place there, in terms of the violence that took place there, in terms of the ghost delegates and other people that were clearly underage, that they could not have been 18 years in 2014. No, some of them that I can actually even identify if they were paraded, that they had never been MDC card-carrying members. So therefore, those were clear irregularities. That meeting that took place at Sheraton was a meeting that was directed by an invisible hand to make sure that a favorable person or a favorable leader of that invisible hand.
Well, you talk about an invisible hand, but would you, hazard to guess who owns the invisible hand?
Well, there are certain things that will tell you who owns the invisible hand. The first and foremost, it is common knowledge that the government of Zimbabwe has got interest at Rainbow Towers. or the Rainbow Hotel. Second, the government of Zimbabwe have got interest in the Zupco buses. And both those organizations had never assisted in MDC, despite the plea of MDC wanting to hire buses for its previous Congress. Therefore, the person who actually has got interest in those two institutions or two organizations is the one that is a visible hand. It doesn't need a rocket scientist to actually deduce that.
You speak about bringing back to life the MDC by working as a united front, and this is the message that Morgan Komichi is bringing, and probably this is in the spirit that Douglas Monzora extended to yourself when he readmitted you to the party. Don't you think that they are moving in the correct direction to bring about that unity?
The correct direction is supposed to be guided by the Constitution, by the way, blessings. It's not guided by the people that first of all want to grab positions, then after grabbing positions, they then turn around and call for unity in their terms. The unity was already put in place by the Supreme Court judgment that had said 2014 delegates. The thing that they were supposed to do, they were not supposed to stop or leave out the some of the 2014 delegates if they were really true to the fact that they wanted unity. So the fact that they decided to leave other people, then get positions, after getting positions, that they say they want to be joined in with those people, it shows that those people have got crooked minds. Those people are being sponsored. Those people are not, acting on their own volition. They are somehow playing a master's piper.
As you speak, are you rubbishing the message released by the president of the MDC, Douglas Monzora, yesterday, that this country needs talks, this country needs unity, and people should put people first, leaders should put people first before themselves? Are you rubbishing that message?
Yes, I'm rubbishing, because I am the first person who spoke about unity, and the very same person, Douglas Monzora, refused to recognize or to implement that unity. Why, particularly now that he has gone to win, to have this bogus win at the Rainbow Towers, then you turn around and say you want unity. Unity is not something that is self-centered. It is something that is all-embracing. If I spoke about unity in 2019, it should have been embraced by then. If I spoke with unity in 2020 when the Supreme Court judgment was delivered, it should have been embraced then. Why didn't they embrace the unity by then? Why did they leave other people from attending Congress, or bar other people from attending Congress if they are genuine about talking? If they are genuine about the unity they are talking about.
Do you think the leaders, like as you say, that the 27 December Congress was a sham, but do you think that those who participated in that election and called it a sham, but have accepted positions that have been offered, are humble, or they're people of no principle?
They are people of no principle, and they are hungry. They've got nothing to live on, and they believe that being around Parliament and earning government money is a good life. They've got nothing that they can, that they can live on. So therefore, they've got to be seen to be parroting those kind of statements, because they are singing for their supper. Otherwise, if there's something that they are doing in life that can sustain them, I don't think they'll be talking the way they're talking. They are only talking to sustain themselves until 2023. What they don't realize, those that are going to have one term in Parliament, they are not even going to have a pension in Parliament. It's a short term or a short-lived, kind of, decision. So therefore, I don't believe those people are genuinely saying it. They are doing it for money.
What if they turn around and accuse you of doing the same and saying that if you had gotten an opportunity to feed, you wouldn't be saying this?
Look, my friend, I can feed myself. I'm sure the picture that you are seeing of a man that you are talking to shows that I'm not hungry. I can feed myself. This is why I can openly and freely say what I'm saying. And this is why I refused to be dragged into the mud by joining this, ship that is already sinking. Because I think for now, I'm self-sufficient like any ordinary Zimbabwean.
Let me take you back to your statement. You wrote here in the final paragraph that in view of the aforementioned points, I want to make it categorically clear that I do not recognize the outcome of 27 December 2020 EOC, and hence the so-called National Council has no legal mandate to readmit to what I do not even recognize. As far as I am concerned, the EOC elections were not conducted, and hence the amendment of the constitution illegitimate. Now let us talk about two things here. Does the National Council have the power to amend a constitution?
It does not have the power to amend the constitution. Clear, and it's very clear according to the MDC constitution. The National Council has no power to amend the constitution. Let me take you back to the Supreme Court and the High Court judgments that brought about this extraordinary Congress. It reversed the appointments that were done by Morgan Tsvangirai because those appointments were as a result of the amendment of the constitution by the National Council. So therefore, it could have not been wrong when it was done by Morgan Tsvangirai, and it becomes correct when it's done by Douglas. That is not on.
Your constitution allows National Council, in its first sitting after Congress, to sit as Congress to finish the unfinished business of Congress. And this is what they claim they did. Doesn't that then make it legal?
The unfinished business, Blessed, Congress sits and it debates and makes resolutions. It then, because Congress is only a day or two, it cannot implement those resolutions. Therefore, it then, tasks the National Council to go and implement. That's the unfinished business, because they did or they made decisions that they did not implement. They then empower the National Council to implement. In this case, if there was any amendment of the Constitution, it should have come from the Congress itself. And then after the amendment by Congress itself, then the National Council was supposed to implement by drafting a constitution or rewriting or amending that constitution physically and printing books for that constitution and distributing. So that's the unfinished business of Congress. And secondly, the extraordinary Congress has got no amendment powers of the Constitution because its business is only one agenda item. And that agenda item is to elect the replacement of Morgan Tsvangirai. Nothing else, nothing more. Anything more than that is illegal.
Yeah, I have here a letter that has been put to the Secretary General of the structure that you do not recognize, Paulina Mpariwa. And this letter comes from the MDCT US province. It was written by the chairman, Dan Moyo. Now he says here that there's no way in the MDCT constitution does it equate an extraordinary Congress to an ordinary Congress. The EOC had one purpose only, to elect a new president. It therefore goes without saying that the only business of that National Council sitting as an extension of that Congress should have been to finish that business, which is the election of a president. Now, do you agree with this assertion?
It's 100%. We only differ on the semantics. As I said earlier on to you, the business of extraordinary Congress is only one agenda item. Only one. It is very clear on the Constitution. It's only one agenda item, that of electing a president. So anything that you want to do to finish the business of Congress should have been the discussion of one, was the voters' roll used at Sheraton a proper voters' roll? Yes or no? If it's no, you put it aside. Secondly, was the quorum at the Sheraton observed? Yes or no? If it's no, put it aside. Was the election free and fair free of violence? No. So if all the three are no's, therefore, National Council's business was to nullify the Congress of the 27th of December.
Now, let us talk about the issue of money in the MDC. You were inside, you're inside men. You were around number 6 on the hierarchy of your political party. Now, there have been serious allegations that there's been money that has been stolen from that party.
Well, I was the first person to say it in a court of law that money was being, misappropriated by not following the laid down procedures that are constitutional, that are clearly spelled out in the MDC constitution. I say that in a court of law. And when I said it, no one challenged me because they knew I was telling the truth. And true to that, I was vindicated because today, the same people that denied when I pointed out that money was being misappropriated are the ones now that are talking figures, are the ones now that have gone to the police to report that some people have taken money. And I knew all that, but I was being, mature about it. I did not want to mention exactly how the money was being misappropriated. I did not want to mention that some legal activities of money laundering were taking place in the MDC. And that is true. If the police wanted to investigate, and if ZANU-PF was not part, an 11th player, a 12th player in the field of MDC, as it were, surely somebody should be arrested because there was money laundering of that money that came from government. It's a fact.
How was it being laundered? Where was it going?
Once you see money that is being paid to somebody that has not done work for any organization, what is that called? Somebody is being paid, but he's not done work, he has not participated in anything, but he's being paid some money. And for what purposes? Automatically, it is money laundering because we know that in Zimbabwe, because of the kind of inflation, right? The inflation that we have as a country, a lot of people prefer to keep their money in foreign currency. But if ever there was foreign currency that fell into the hands of the MDC, members and MDC party, how did it come? Was it transacted through a bank? No. If it was not transacted through a bank, what is it called?
Certainly, it was going through the black market.
What is that black market called?
So, would you be?
It's money laundering. That black market that's what is called money laundering.
Would you be?
Because you are realizing unfair profit from an illegal source.
Would you be kind enough to share some of these names of people who were paid without doing any work? That would lend credence.
Unfortunately, I'm not an investigating officer. And I don't want you to do the job of the police. All what I can do is I'll expose the ZRP that they are not doing their work. I will expose ZANU-PF that they are an invisible hand that is making sure that no investigation that take place. I will also point a finger at ZANU-PF as an invisible hand because they are not auditing those funds because those are public funds.
Do you, having worked with Madame Thokozani Kupe, do you think that she's an astute leader with an eye to detail?
Well, Thokozani Kupe is my sister by virtue of me and her having known each other for a long, long time. We've known each other for more than 30 years now. So I don't want to smear Thokozani Kupe. Some things could have happened. Some people could have cheated on her because, Zimbabwean men are always, chauvinistic when it comes to women leadership. Some male chauvinists there, played tricks for her, and some things could have not gone well under her leadership, but I don't want to blame her.
But look, you spoke about money being stolen. She went ahead to write to the court to say that your evidence should not be heard. And immediately after she lost, she started talking about money being stolen. The people of Zimbabwe deserve to know, because this is a politician receiving public funds, and I think it would be fair for you to give a fair answer.
Look, as I told you, MDC has got so many male chauvinists of which I strongly believe that the men around Thokozani Kupe decided to, cheat her into believing that whatever was happening was correct. And they could have decided to convince her that she should write a letter and, claim that monies were not being misappropriated. But for a fact, and I mean for a fact, if truth be told, let those funds be audited. Let all those transactions in the bank be audited. And once they are audited, let those transactions be put on public record that this is what happened. So much was transferred from this account to that account. And that person should say what was he supplying to MTC. So much was transferred to this account to that account. That person does not even own a business. What was the purpose of that transfer? So, it's easy. The government is supposed to audit all public funds. Such is the political finances, finance that is supposed to be audited. I know for a fact that ZANU-PF might be doing the same because they are also receiving the same fund. So therefore, they will not audit those funds because they know that they are also involved, what MTC was involved in.
But do you think that the audit will achieve anything useful? Because the people you are accusing of having laundered money, for instance, are the ones that are in office right now and are preparing the books before the auditor comes in. So, I mean, does it even make sense?
Remember, that money came through the bank, Baba. It did not come as hard cash to their hands. So the banks cannot be manipulated by those people that misappropriated money, by the way. They can only, they can only manipulate and play around with papers of transactions going on. But thorough auditing can actually reveal that, look, for instance, if one lump sum of, say, over $1 million was paid to an individual or to a company, surely that company should have supplied something. Or surely that individual should have supplied something. So if there's nothing that can be proved that it was supplied, then how do you claim that that money was properly used?
Yeah, but this is my question, Mr. Bhebhe. That for instance, if you had given me a transfer of 1 million and you are still in office right now and you are holding the books, you can surely just call me and ask me to bring you an invoice of having supplied fuel, which we could then have said was used.
Fuel, for you to supply fuel is drawn from a filling station or from a fuel company. You see, this audit is good because it can follow all those details. And that particular company that will have supplied should raise an invoice against what? Against the payment. Because it cannot be payment that you supplied fuel that is got no invoice or that is got no track that it came from a certain fuel company.
Then let us talk about the appointments of the position of the spokesperson, of the Treasurer General, of the Secretary General. Are these appointments constitutional?
Let me say this: the whole, standing committee, as it were constituted right now, to me, I would say it is operating unconstitutional. Why am I saying so? In terms of the Supreme Court judgment, the 2014 standing committee comprised of 15 members. Out of 15 members minus 3 members, 1 who is deceased, 2 that resigned, you are left with 12. Out of 12 members that are supposed to be legible or that are supposed to be legally representing the party as per the Supreme Court judgment, only 3 are sitting in that standing committee. The rest have been appointed. Why? There is no provision for that in the Constitution. Yes, there is provision for the president to appoint deputies, but he can only appoint deputies from the Secretary General going downwards. He cannot appoint the vice chairman. He cannot appoint the vice president. There is no provision in the Constitution for those particular 2 to be appointed. 3, there is, I hear or I've read or I've seen, there is over 20 standing committee members right now as we talk in the MTCT. That expansion of the standing committee is illegal in terms of the Supreme Court judgment that say, let's revert back to the 2014 structure.
Now, what can be done to correct this? Apart from her asking...
Well, I will not say it on air, but what I can say is if Monzora was me, he should realize that the noises that are coming from outside are too loud for him to pretend that things are normal. He should smell the coffee, do the right thing, either convince the people to appoint him or the so-called National Council to appoint him as an interim leader, or step down and allow the process to appoint an interim leader so that a proper EOC that should be done according to the Supreme Court judgment should take place, not the kangaroo one that took place at the Rainbow Hotel.
As an individual, do you regret any part that you played leading to this December 27 EOC?
I really don't regret, because I actually was vindicated, because all the things that I raised well before that Congress came to play on the 27th of December.
Do you not think that you accepting the Supreme Court judgment and going in with Dr. Thokozani Kupe actually gave rise to this shamble that you're talking about right now?
Look, my friend, there is no citizen of any country that would refuse a judgment from the highest court in the land. Unless if you want to be a rebel, unless if you want to rebel against the state. Once a judgment is given, whether that judgment was given wrong or right, whether that person was wrongly charged, but if a judgment is given, that judgment is going to be followed. That's how a normal nation operates. So therefore, any person who is normal, yes, some people might feel that the Supreme Court erred, but once a judgment was delivered, everyone was supposed to abide by it. So was I.
Civil litigation. So for instance, if you sue me and the court says I have the right to pay you back your money, out of your own pity, even after that court judgment has been passed, you can simply say, no, I'm forfeiting this money, you can have it. Out of conscience, out of realization that what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to benefit from is wrong. You could have done that, wouldn't you?
Which money are you talking about? I'm getting a bit lost now. Maybe your question is not very clear.
I'm saying that out of realization, out of conscience, you could have simply said, this process that we are getting ourselves in is not proper, and out of conscience you could have just walked away, and nothing would have adjourned you to continue following this path that you now call a sham.
Actually, I was bound by the Supreme Court judgment because I was the organizing secretary of the 2014 Congress delegates. So once the Supreme Court spelled out that those are the people responsible to go for EOC, I was also bound by that judgment. Because I'm a law-abiding citizen, I know somehow there was a strong feeling that the Supreme Court had not, done a good job. But because I was, a law-abiding citizen, I had to follow the law. All what I wanted all the processes to be followed, or due processes were supposed to be followed to the letter and the spirit of the constitution of the MDC.
I see. But Obet chose to disassociate, even though there was a Supreme Court. He chose to disassociate, and nothing came to him. Nelson Chamisa chose to disassociate, and nothing came to him. So you could have, out of principle, also disassociated. Wouldn't it have made sense?
I don't think you are correct there, Blessed. Obet could resign. He did not disassociate. He resigned even before the Supreme Court judgment was delivered. That's point number one.
He resigned from...
Point number two, let me tell you, these are facts. These are stubborn facts. Good to resign before the Supreme Court judgment was delivered. And he resigned from his position.
From Kupe as vice president of the MDC. Of the MDC.
Of a faction.
Yes.
He resigned as a vice president of a faction.
Yes, not...
In terms of the 2014 2014 structure, he was supposed to be the spokesperson.
Yes.
Because once, in any organization, any person can volunteer to resign and cannot be forced, right? So I did not prefer the route of resigning, but I preferred the route of correcting the wrongs that had been spelled out by the Supreme Court. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Chamisa did not decide to dissociate himself. Remember, Chamisa went to a Congress in Gweru in 2019, and when he actually sat with his outfit, the MDC Alliance, they had agreed that all members of the MDC Alliance that belong to the 2014 structure should go and participate in the Congress. In the process of pronouncing that, Thokozani Kupe decided to write a letter of expulsion to Chamisa. Those are stubborn facts, not that Chamisa dissociated himself. Let me put the record straight.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. Now, I want you, as we wrap this up, to speak to us, in terms of Zimbabwe moving forward in the political discourse. What is your view? What should happen to ensure that Zimbabwe stop having this political infested poison in the water of life?
I think the number one thing that we should desist from, or we should completely change, is the centralized kind of governance system. The centralized governance system, creates, dictators, creates a leadership that, has got this self-centeredness of being them and them alone. So we should dissociate, or we should move away from the centralized government system. Then we should quickly implement the devolution of power, where power is devolved to provinces. And once power is devolved to provinces, we are not going to have an omnipotent leader who is the man and cannot be challenged, because power will have been devolved to provinces. Remember, when we devolve power to provinces, for argument's sake, we've got 10 provinces in Zimbabwe. But if you were to ask me as Bhebhe, I would say no. Under a devolution system, we don't need 10 provinces. We would rather go back to the original provinces. When the white men came in this country, Zimbabwe had only about 5 provinces. It is the creation of, the past that created up to 10 provinces, because of the central government system that was now parceling out, its authority to appointed people who are supposedly running the province. For instance, if you look at right now, it says there is a devolution of power in Zimbabwe, but that is not devolution of power. Devolution of power does not mean that a president appoints a governor to run a province. It ceases to be devolution of power. It becomes something else. It's still central. The person who still has got power, who is a lot of power, still remains as a president. Secondly, all the monies collected in all the provinces are taken to central government. And it is the executive of central government that decides to parcel out how that money is distributed. That on its own brings about dictatorship, because you are bringing a lot of authority to one person. But if you decentralize that authority to at least 5 provinces, as they were before independence, if you decentralize to 5 provinces, you know that you will have created competition amongst provinces, such that each province will try and elect the best candidate to run that province. Therefore, you have got a president who has got less powers, who cannot dictate over all the provinces. Once you do that, I can tell you Zimbabwe will be on, and all of us will enjoy. Give you an example. If you look at the 5 provinces that I'm talking about now, Matabeleland, Midlands, Masvingo, Manicaland, and Mashonaland, all of them have got one particular resource that they can rely on to improve their own provinces. Because right now, the share of the cake is not equal. You look at Matabeleland is a dry region, but we have got other programs that could have been implemented well ahead to save the situation in this region. Because decisions are made central, all the money goes to somewhere else to go and do other things, instead of taking priority to make sure that you harness water through the Zambezi through the Gwayashangani, so that Matebele and up to Masvingo becomes a green belt from that water coming from this. But that is not happening because of central government system. Devolve the power, devolve authority, you will see things going on.
Thank you. I want you to address just 4 things as we close. The first thing is that today's topic we spoke about is politics is a game of backstabbers, opportunists, and crooks. Do you agree?
Come again, your phone lost network a bit.
Okay, so I'm saying politics is a game of backstabbers, opportunists, and crooks. Do you agree?
Particularly in Zimbabwe, I agree 101%. You look at the ruling party, there are so many people like that. Look at the opposition now, is resembling the same thing. It's a shame. It's just a shame.
I want you to address the president of this country, Emmerson Mnangagwa, in terms of politics in Zimbabwe.
Well, if I were Emmerson Mnangagwa myself, I would tell him this. I would do this, or maybe let me say this to Emmerson Mnangagwa. Emmerson Mnangagwa had, hell of a good opportunity to cleanse himself of any wrongdoing that he had done in the past. Because if I were him, I would tell him this now. If I were him, when the so-called, dealing with the criminals around president, which some of us believe it was a coup, took place. If I were Mnangagwa, I was supposed to lay a clear and a clean, playing field to any contestant who wants to come and contest and win elections. And once I've done that, I then step down. Remember, once you are a president, you are entitled to a pension until you die of a president, of a state president. You step down, because remember, already Mnangagwa was already rich, He could have stepped down, let a normal democratic process take its place. Today, he was going to be a second Mandela in Zimbabwe. But because he decided to stay on, a lot of skeletons in the cupboards are now following him. A lot of things are now following him. The economy is working against him. His own people are working against him. The opposition is working against him. Everything is working against him. So he has actually created this pattern for himself. Yet he was supposed to take advantage of saying, right, I have brought about peace, tranquility, and democracy in Zimbabwe. I become a Mandela. And I can tell you, Mnangagwa's statue could be flying all over the world as an icon if he had done that. But I will still say, time is still there. Put your house in order, clear the playing field, step down in 2023, let others take over, you will remain an icon. That's all I can tell you.
Address Nelson Chamisa.
Well, I don't want to address Nelson Chamisa. He's my young brother, he's my colleague, he's my friend. If I want to address him, I won't address him through the press.
But it would only be fair for the people of Zimbabwe to hear you talk to these leaders leaders of who are being pushed into national dialogue. What is your public advice to him?
Look, personally, I don't believe this issue of national dialogue will ever solve anything. ZANU-PF won 2/3 majority in parliament. They won a president. They were given the mandate to rule. Let them rule. If they fail, Zimbabweans will be given an opportunity in 2023, kick them out. That's my opinion. And secondly, I don't want to compare or comment about Chamisa because Chamisa is not in power. He is aspiring to be in power. So any person who is aspiring to be in power is as good as me. The person that I'm supposed to attack because he is supposed to be leading a country that I am a citizen is none other than Emmerson Mnangagwa. I've got the right to attack him because he's leading a country where I am a citizen. This other guy is just a leader of a political party that is aspiring to go into the office that is being occupied by Mhlanga. So the two are not the same. The problem with Zimbabwe is you have always put those two as the same. You want to compete or you want to compare the two. You are wrong to compare the two. Just deal with the issues that are at hand, and the issue as at hand is the failure of ZANU-PF to correct the wrongs that are happening in this country, to build the economy of this country, to bring peace in this country, to bring democracy in this country, to stop violence in this country, to stop disappearances in this country, to stop wrong arrests in this country, to stop arresting people that have not committed crimes in this country. And that lies squarely with Mhlaga's administration, without the assistance of Chamisa, without the assistance of any political party. It is him who was given that mandate by the people, and is supposed to perform the mandate. If he cannot, call it quits, my brother. Step down.
Address the people of Zimbabwe.
To the people of Zimbabwe, I just want to say, please, I pray, can you teach to your children, educate your children, tell your children that we all have to go back to the spirit that we had during the liberation movement. During the liberation movement, there was only one spirit and one spirit alone. The spirit was the white man had violated our rights. He is an enemy. Let's all fight. So to the people of Zimbabwe, even those that are supporting ZANU-PF, your support for ZANU-PF just to get a 50 kg of maize and a 50 kg of fertilizer is not enough. What should be enough is for you to realize that what ZANU-PF has done is a complete disaster since 1980. Can you desist from giving them that support and go back to the spirit that we had during the liberation struggle, that we all oppose what is wrong? What is wrong now in Zimbabwe is ZANU-PF, and let's all oppose it.
Thank you very much for joining us here on the situation right now. Fellow Zimbabweans, viewers across the world, this is the situation right now. And this is the prime show where we bring you the topics that matter. The aspect of Zimbabweans, the issues that have been discussed this afternoon. So passionate is Abednico Bhebhe, the former organizing secretary of the MDCT, as was led by Morgan, the late Morgan Richard Changirai. And he spoke about a number of issues. We do not shy away from the questions. We do not filter the people's response. We talk to you. We allow the nation to speak to each other and not through each other. I am Dara Blessed Mhlanga on Here is the Situation right now.